Mr. O'Halloran, who is a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee. And according to our rules, we can, as members of the full committee, we can waive on to a subcommittee. And so we welcome you this afternoon and recognize you for 5 minutes questions. Put your microphone on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Dr. Bright, thank you for your remarks today, your insight, your knowledge, and your caring for the American people. You have touched on several concerns I share with my colleagues about how the United States has responded to COVID-19. We must address the health crisis head-on if we want to tackle the economic crisis that has overtaken our country. We are going to need a coordinated, as you mentioned, national testing and contact tracing plan spearheaded by the federal government to prevent states from competing with one another for resources and planning for hotspot attacks and other issues that will come up. This is the only way that people will feel safe returning to work, eating at restaurants, enjoying Arizona's public lands, and being out in public and close to others. This flexibility piece is critical, and you can't have that unless you have a coordinated process. In my district, the Navajo Nation has for months been going under this process. And it's 170,000 people. The area is the size of West Virginia. So they're not all gathered in a group. So this fallacy that only urban areas are impacted and that it can't spread very fast. 16 people died yesterday. And in fact, this on a per capita basis, this currently has more cases than any state in the country. And yet this hotspot is still not being addressed in the appropriate way. More resources are needed, and they're needed now, and they were needed more than a month ago when we started trying to get this done. They continue to struggle to see the federal government's promised payments each in a timely manner. It came through finally, but it has to be timely in order to respond. This will bolster the health system and provide people with water, food, and supplies during this time of great crisis. Dr. Bright, as an infectious disease expert, what is the one thing that the federal government must do to ensure that hotspots like Navajo Nation or anywhere else in our country are successfully mitigated in a timely way, that this virus does not continue to spread throughout communities, and to bring back the faith of the citizens of our country to be able to understand that we will respond quickly with the necessary supplies?
Congressman, that's an excellent question. I believe that there's a need to recognize that it is a hot spot and understand the per capita outbreak of a number of infections in different areas and not treat every area in the United States the same. The rural areas, the less dense areas are not the same as a dense city such as New York City. However, you could have just as significant a challenge in a rural area or less dense area as you described in Arizona. So I think the first recognition is to get the data across the country into the federal government so they can make the right prioritization decisions and allocation, equitable allocation of those limited supplies and resources to areas such as yours with a hotspot area. I don't think there's a full recognition yet of how to define necessarily the hotspots in a standardized way across the country. So we need to have the scientists review this challenge and come up with an equitable distribution and recognition of those areas.
Thank you, Doctor. I want to point out that this enemy goes much faster than one of our jet planes. Our fighters go fast, but this goes microseconds. One person to another, and it passes on and on and on. So I appreciate your comment. But statistics has to be relevant and timely in order to be able to do that, and it needs a central database. Dr. Bright, we are currently seeing the number of COVID-19 tests that are being administered increase nationwide. What major hurdles stand in our way from increasing our testing capacity quickly, moving forward, and how can the federal government address these now or within a quick period of time? It's taken, White Mountain Apache are going through a hot spot right now in my district. They cannot get tests. And they've had 400 cases out of 14,000 people. I mean, this is a critical issue, please.
I certainly still think we need to recognize the importance of the different types of tests. And when we identify those different types of tests are essential for what we need to do to isolate the virus or identify people infected with the virus, then we need to put all efforts into ramping up production of all supplies for those tests. We've found many times that we've ramped up now test production, but we have not thought about the critical reagents that accompany those tests. We haven't thought about the swabs. We're asking equipment, diagnostic equipment that might normally run 100 tests a day to run 10,000 tests a day in a 24-hour period. So there hasn't been a real thought through plan about how to maintain that equipment. That equipment now is failing in many places. So as we ramp up capacity to test, and we haven't thought all the way through the raw materials and maintenance of that equipment, those supplies, then we can find ourselves in a few days down the road not having the tests we thought we had, not having the supply we thought we needed. So again, this is where a coordinated strategy and plan for testing comes into place. Not just how to use the test, but how to make sure we're sustaining that supply. How to make sure that we've thought of every component, if it's a swab, if it's a buffer, if it's a lubricant for the instrument itself. Making sure that all of those things are considered and in that national strategy, so we don't ramp up in one area and crash in another. We have to ramp up in all areas at once.
Thank you, Doctor, and Madam Chair, I yield.